I knelt on her porch, eyes fixed on the box I had just left. The package was small, wrapped in plain brown paper with no return address, only a faint symbol stamped in black ink, a simple B. Inside, I had carefully placed the photos, dozens of them, each one capturing her in the act, her hand reaching out, her foot stepping onto someone else's porch, her tote bag bulging with stolen goods. Every image was labeled with the date, time, and location, an unflinching timeline of her betrayal. I set it down gently on her welcome mat, adjusted it until it sat perfectly centered, then turned away without another glance. The street was silent. The trees swayed softly as if nothing had happened. But I could feel it, the weight of her gaze, the silent acknowledgement that she knew, somehow, that she'd been caught. I didn't look back, I didn't need to. The evening was calm, almost too calm. No one in the neighborhood spoke about her disappearance from the street's rhythm. No more waving, no more small talk. The porch lights remained off. Her roses looked wilted and forgotten. The woman who once strutted around with a smug smile and a tote full of stolen parcels was gone, replaced by a shadow of herself retreating into the silence she'd created. Inside, I closed the door softly, letting the quiet settle. I didn't need to check the footage. I'd seen enough. I had watched her every move, every theft, every lie. The evidence was enough. It sat on my hard drive, silent, unchangeable, undeniable. I had documented everything, every step, every moment she thought she hid, and now I was finally done watching. But I wasn't finished. I opened the drawer, where Liam's camera sat, the one he used to record hikes and sunsets. I attached the memory card, carefully mounting it in a small, discreet device I'd rigged. It was time for the final act. This wasn't about revenge alone. It was about truth, about exposing her for what she truly was. I had spent days designing the perfect trap. A small reinforced box filled with a decoy package, shredded newspaper, a glitter bomb, and a tiny camera set to record everything. I'd worked with a beekeeper, Hannah, to design a hive that could fit inside, one that wouldn't harm the bees but would deliver a message, one wrapped in symbolism and justice. Tonight was the night I would finally let her taste the chaos she'd been so casually stealing from all of us. I placed the box on the porch just after sunset, in the shadowed corner near her door, where her motion sensor wouldn't detect it. I angled the camera, set the timer, and double-checked everything. No mistakes. I wanted her to open it, to be caught in the act, completely unaware. As I stepped back, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the mixture of grief and resolve. Liam's voice echoed softly in my mind, telling me to be precise, to be patient. This was my chance to let her see herself, the real her, exposed in a moment she couldn't undo. The hours dragged. I sat inside, watching the monitor, heart pounding with each passing minute. Just after 2:30 a.m., the porch light flicked on. I held my breath. There she was, Karen, in her oversized sunglasses, her tote bag swinging casually, her steps confident. As she approached the porch, she paused, her eyes scanning the area. The footage showed her bending, her hands reaching for the box. Her fingers slid beneath the tape, tugging gently. I watched her face tighten as she realized what she'd found. Nothing. But a simple box, but inside the trap was set. She lifted the flap. The moment she did, chaos erupted. Bees, disturbed by the sudden light and movement, surged out in a black and gold storm. The hum was deafening enough to drown out her screams. She froze, eyes wide with terror, arms flailing as she tried to swat them away, but the swarm was relentless, pouring into her foyer. The footage captured her frantic retreat, her crashing through the hallway, knocking over furniture, her voice piercing the night as she yelled and swatted. She ran outside, barefoot, hair wild, trying to escape her own house as the bees chased her, filling the air with a deafening hum. I watched her stumble into her driveway, her face blotched with red welts, her screams fading into muffled cries. She threw herself into her car, slammed the door, and sped off, leaving her porch in chaos. I sat back, stunned, heart pounding. That was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. I clipped the footage, blurred her address, and uploaded it to a private, drive just for me. No need for anyone else to see it yet. It was my reckoning, my justice. In the days that followed, the neighborhood shifted. Rumors spread, but no one knew the truth. Except me. Karen vanished from the street, her porch abandoned, her routine broken. She no longer strolled past. No more smug waves, no more pretentious HOA meetings. Her roses wilted, her house stayed dark. And slowly, the silence grew. The stolen packages stopped, replaced by small gestures, notes of gratitude, returned. Books, a jar of honey left on my doorstep. The neighborhood was healing, but I knew the real work was done. The truth was out and her mask had cracked. One evening, I stood outside staring at her empty house. The windows were dark, the porch deserted. I felt Liam's presence beside me, his silent encouragement. I whispered his name into the night, feeling a strange warmth amid the quiet. The next morning, I found the package I'd left for her gone. Her trash bin was open, her mail missing. She hadn't even bothered to return what she stole, just quietly accepted her defeat. Her silence was her apology, her surrender. Weeks passed. Karen's routine faded completely. She avoided the street, avoided eye contact, even stopped walking her dog. Her once crowded porch was empty. The woman who had once commanded the neighborhood with her arrogance was gone, replaced by a ghost of her former self. And I finally felt peace. Deep, true, unshakable. I had uncovered her secrets, exposed her lies, and reclaimed my dignity. Liam's picture sat on the shelf, his last gift, his final message. I looked at it, then at the empty street, knowing I had done what I needed to do. In the quiet, I poured honey into my tea and took a sip, the sweetness grounding me. Outside, the shadows lengthened, and the world seemed to breathe easier. The storm had passed, and in its wake only silence remained, powerful, peaceful, and final. Because sometimes silence isn't just absence. It's the loudest truth of all. Would you like me to continue with the next chapter, or develop this story further? Her footsteps echoed faintly as she hurried out of her house, eyes wide and frantic, clutching a crumpled envelope. The neighborhood had fallen eerily silent. No more whispers, no more glances, just her racing down the street with one thing on her mind: escape. But I was already there, waiting behind my window, watching her every move, heart pounding with a strange mixture of anticipation and cold resolve. She darted across the street, glancing over her shoulder as if she sensed something was wrong. Her breathing was ragged, the red welts on her face still visible, the red flush of panic on her cheeks. She slipped behind her car, fumbling with the keys, trying to get away. I knew what she was holding, the crumpled envelope, probably the last of her stolen treasures, or perhaps her last attempt at salvation. I stepped outside, quiet, just enough to be seen but not enough to startle her. Her eyes locked onto me for a moment, and in that instant her bravado cracked. The mask she'd worn so confidently was slipping away, revealing a woman cornered by her own guilt. She backed toward her porch, hands trembling, voice trembling, as she tried to speak. You don't have anything," she stammered, voice high and shrill. "You can't prove anything." I lifted my phone, the screen flickering with the evidence I'd gathered. Every stolen package, every lie, every moment of her thefts, all laid bare in silent proof. Her face drained of color, but she still clung to her false composure. "I've seen enough," I said softly, voice steady. "You thought no one was watching, that your lies would never catch up. But you forgot. Truth is patient. It waits, and it always finds a way." She shook her head violently, trying to dismiss it all, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Her eyes darted around desperately, seeking an escape that was no longer there. The neighborhood had come alive, curious eyes peeking from behind curtains, neighbors who had once tolerated her arrogance now whispering behind their hands. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, voice cracking like brittle glass. I needed. It was just a few packages." I took a step closer, voice low and unwavering. "It was more than a few packages. It was a pattern. You've been stealing from all. Of us, from the elderly, the families, even from those who trusted you. And I've documented everything." Her lips trembled, and for a moment, she looked lost, small and vulnerable beneath her carefully curated mask. Then suddenly, her face twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so clever," she spat. "You think you're better than me?" I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out the small reinforced box I'd prepared. Inside, the tiny camera was already recording, the lid rigged to spring open at just the right moment. I watched her eyes flicker with suspicion as she took a hesitant step back. "This isn't just about packages anymore," I said quietly. "It's about what you've been hiding, what you've been stealing, your lies, your secrets. And now, everyone will see who you really are." She lunged forward, trying to snatch the box, but I held firm. Her fingers barely touched the corner before the lid popped open. Bees spilled out in a swirling, deafening cloud. The hum was fierce, almost alive, as if the swarm had been waiting for this moment. Her screams pierced the night as she staggered back, batting wildly at the air. The bees were relentless, filling her house and her yard with a black, buzzing fury. She flailed, knocking over a flower pot, stumbling onto her porch trying to escape her own trap. Her high-pitched cries echoed down the street as she sprinted toward her car, fumbling with the door handle, desperate to leave. The camera caught her frantic dash, her face distorted with terror. She tore into her car, slamming the door and starting the engine, flat out fleeing as the swarm chased her, a living indictment of her lies. I watched her disappear into the distance, heart pounding, then turned back to the house. I pressed stop on the recording, feeling a strange mixture of relief and cold satisfaction. The evidence was captured, unchangeable, undeniable. I'd finally exposed her. Later, I downloaded the footage, cropped out the address, and uploaded it to a secure drive, naming it simply Porch Justice. Final. No one needed to see it yet. I knew the neighborhood would start whispering soon enough. And I waited. Silent. Patient. Ready for the ripple effect to unfold. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the empty space where her porch once stood. The flowers she'd once tended now drooped, and her house was dark, silent. I poured a glass of water, feeling the cool weight of reality settle in my chest. The rage had faded, replaced by something colder. Clarity. I had done what I needed, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Liam's face flashed in my mind. His gentle smile, the way he'd carefully pack her garden books, leave notes, create little surprises. His love was in those moments, in those packages. I whispered his name softly into the night, a vow to keep his memory alive, to protect what mattered, truth and dignity. And the very next morning, I checked the porch. The package I'd left for her was gone. Her trash bin was open, her mail missing. She hadn't returned anything. No apology, no confrontation, just silent surrender. Her silence was her apology. In the days that followed, the neighborhood slowly mended. People began to talk again, sharing small stories, exchanging notes. The stolen packages stopped. The smiles returned, tentative at first, then genuine. Karen, meanwhile, kept her distance, her routines broken, her arrogance shattered. She avoided the street, avoided eye contact, her presence diminished to a whisper of what it once was. I realized I had reclaimed more than just my packages. I'd reclaimed my voice, my patience, my peace. I looked out one evening, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, feeling a strange calm I hadn't known in months. Liam's memory was still alive in my heart, but now it was accompanied by a quiet strength I never knew I had. The silence around me was no longer empty. It was full of truth, powerful, unbreakable, and final. And in that silence, I finally found my peace. Would you like me to continue with the next scene or develop it further? The porch was empty now. The last remnants of her presence swept, away by the wind. The package I left sat quietly on the welcome mat, untouched. I watched from the shadows, heart pounding with a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. She had finally taken the bait. The trap had worked. The swarm had spoken. And now, Everything was about to change. I stepped back into the darkness as her silhouette appeared in the faint glow of the street lamp. She moved cautiously, eyes darting around, clutching that crumpled envelope, her last act of defiance. Her breath was ragged, her face streaked with red welts, a testament to her own reckless greed. The moment she reached the door, she hesitated, hand trembling as she lifted the package. I held my breath. This was the culmination, the final act of my quiet justice. I knew she sensed something was different, but her curiosity overwhelmed her fear. Her fingers tugged at the tape, hesitating just long enough to make her vulnerable. Then she opened it. Chaos erupted. Bees burst forth like a living tidal wave. Their black and gold bodies flooded into her foyer, filling the room with a deafening hum. Her scream shattered the night as she staggered backward, arms flailing wildly. She batted at the air, trying to swat them away, but it was futile. The swarm was relentless, surging in through every crack, every opening she left unsealed. Her face contorted with terror. Her screams echoed across the street, raw and primal. She knocked over furniture, crashed through the hallway, knocking down a lamp, her voice rising in a panic that was almost animalistic. The bees poured out into her living room, into her yard, and over her porch, filling the air with a relentless hum, as if the entire neighborhood had just been invaded by a living, breathing storm. I watched her run outside, barefoot, her hair wild, trying to escape her own trap. She threw herself into her car, slamming the door, trying to flee, her face a mask of pure panic. But the bees weren't done. They pursued her, hovering around her car, buzzing fiercely. Her screams faded into muffled yelps as she tore out of her driveway, speeding away in a panic-driven blur. The camera caught everything: the frantic, hopeless fight, the chaos, her desperate flight. I felt a strange calm settle over me as I stared at the footage. It was done. The truth was out. She couldn't hide anymore. I stepped away from the window, eyes fixed on the screen. My fingers trembled, not with fear but with a strange sense of victory. This was justice, raw and unfiltered. I had finally unmasked her, and nothing could erase it now. I uploaded the footage to a private drive, naming it simply The Final Reveal. No one needed to see it yet. I knew the neighborhood would start whispering soon enough. But I wasn't in a hurry. I wanted her to feel it. Every second of it. The shame, the fear, the realization that she'd been caught in her own. Well, that night I sat quietly on my porch watching the darkened street. The house was silent, empty of her presence. Her roses, once proud and vibrant, now drooped and faded. The woman who once strutted around with a smug smile was gone, replaced by a ghost, retreating into her own silence. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Deep, unshakable peace. Not because I had won, but because I had finally reclaimed what she'd stolen. My dignity, my truth, my voice. Suddenly, a faint movement caught my eye. From across the street, her porch, light flicked on, then another. She was there, watching. Her silhouette appeared at her window, her face ghostly in the glow. She stared at her house, at her empty porch, her wilted roses, perhaps at the evidence I'd left. A strange cold smile crept across my face. She finally saw the damage she'd done. She finally understood she couldn't hide from it anymore, and then she did something I didn't expect. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled note. She hesitated, then unfolded it, reading quietly to herself. I couldn't hear her, but I knew what it was. An apology? A plea? No. Something deeper. She was surrendering. A sudden gust of wind swept across the street, carrying her words away. She turned slowly and disappeared inside her house. The lights went out. Silence returned, but this time, it felt different. Heavier. Resolved. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything, the grief, the rage, the justice. Liam's memory flickered in my mind, his gentle smile, the way he'd always believed in starting over. I whispered his name softly, tears threatening to fall, but I kept them in. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. I looked down at the package I had left, still sitting on the mat. Inside, I had placed one last thing, an empty, plain box wrapped in the same brown paper. No glitter, no bees. Just a simple message. You were seen. You were recorded. This ends now. I gently set it down, stepping back as I watched her house go dark once more. The street was silent. The storm had passed, and in that silence I finally understood something. I didn't need to hurt her. I just needed her to see herself, to face her reflection in the truth I had laid bare. Because sometimes, the greatest power lies in quiet truth, unforgiving, unchangeable and final, and that truth was now mine.